Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Daled Amud Beis 4b of Maseches Brachos. We're starting 2 lines from the bottom of the page. In the middle of the line, the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Afal pi shekara adam kriya shema b'beis haknesses. Even though a person said Shema in shul, mitzvah likroso al mitaso. There's still a mitzvah to say it on one's bed when one goes to sleep. So even though one fulfilled the mitzvah, the evening mitzvah of saying Kriya Shema, here it says in shul, but the idea is that they already fulfilled the mitzvah of uveshach b'cha, when you lie down, that you say Kriya Shema at night, but they specifically should say it when they go to sleep. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, he explained, Maikra, what is the meaning of this pasuk? Meaning it comes from the following pasuk. The pasuk says in Tehillim, Chapter 4, it says, Rigzu ve'al techata'u. Rigzu, for now, we'll translate as tremble and do not sin. Basically, like, fear God, do not sin. Imru bilvavchem al mishkavchem. Say bilvavchem, say in your hearts on your bedside. Vidomu sela, and then sleep. Then sleep. Be silent, but then sleep. And Rashi explains that Imru bilvavchem is a reference to Shema. Imru, say Shema, which says al lihavecha, on your heart. When should you say al mishkavchem, on your bed, when you go to sleep? V'damu sel, and then go to sleep. Right? Or actually, you can also learn al mishkavchem is just another reference to Shema. Say the al mishkavchem b'shach b'cha. Say that which it says in it b'shach b'cha. V'damu sel, and then go to sleep. In other words, this is telling us to say Shema before one goes to sleep, and it sounds like this is maybe an expression of Rigzu ve'al techato, of tremble and don't fear, meaning accept the yoke of heaven. Tremble and don't sin. Accept the yoke of heaven upon you and don't sin. And when should you do that? When you go to sleep. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, top of the next page, Im Talmid Chachamu, if the person is a Torah scholar, Ein Tzarich, he doesn't need to say Shema right before he goes to bed. Why not? Rashi says because he's always learning, and that itself provides protection from sin. Amar Abaye said, Af Talmid Chacham yibai le'lameimar chad psuka derachmi. But even a Talmid Chacham needs to say a pasuk, a pasuk that's of rachmi, of asking for mercy, a supplication. Kigon, for example, the pasuk in Tehillim Lamed Aleph, chapter 31, B'yadcha afgid ruchi, in your hand I entrust my ruach, my soul, my spirit. Padisa osi, Hashem kel emes, you redeem me, Hashem, God of truth. And it's a prayer for protection as one goes to sleep. They can express that pasuk that it sounds like we're reading this, I hand over my spirit, padisasi, but redeem it, meaning bring me back tomorrow morning. That's fitting that everybody should say that, even a Talmid Chacham, so says Abaye. Amar Rabbi Levi bar Chama Reb Shimon ben Lakish. So once we began to discuss this verse, the first verse, Rigzu ve'al techatos, the Gemara expounds on that verse, not necessarily directly connected to Kriya Shema anymore. Says Reb Levi bar Chama Reb Shimon ben Lakish, li'olam yargiz adam yetzer tov al yetzer hara. A person should incite, anger their yetzer tov against their yetzer hara. You have to fight your yetzer hara with your yetzer tov. Fight your evil inclination with your good inclination. Shenamar, as it says, Rigzu ve'al techato. Rigzu, I said before, means tremble. Also is associated with anger. It's like the trembling of anger. So get angry and don't sin. Well, usually we associate anger with sin. So what does this pasuk mean? What it means is anger your yetzer tov against your yetzer hara. Incite your yetzer tov against your yetzer hara. You have to go to battle against your yetzer hara. You can't just lay back and expect things to go smoothly. It's a constant battle. Im natzcho, if you defeat it, mutav, great. If on its own, just with inspiring yourself, revving yourself up to fight the yetzer hara, that works, then good. If you can overcome your desires and laziness and whatever it might be that way, then good. V'im lav, and if not, yasok b'Torah, then learn Torah. Okay, you should learn Torah anyways, but specifically to overcome desires, learn Torah. Shenamar, as it says, as the pasuk continues, Imru bilavavchem, say with your heart. So it says first, rigzu v'atechato, first incite your yetzer tov against your yetzer hara, and then you won't sin. And then it says Imru bilavavchem, say bilavavchem. And that's a reference to learning Torah. How so? So the Maharsha explains, really based on another Gemara. The Gemara says that in Pagabach menuvalzeh, if this disgusting one encounters you, meaning the Yetzer Hara, mashcheyu lebeis hamedrash, drag him to the beis medrash. The Maharsha cites that Gemara. It's a Gemara in Sukkah, and that's how you fight the Yetzer Hara. And the words bilvavchem, he explains, is a reference to this matter, because the concept of levavchem, we say the same thing by b'chol levavcha, with all your heart. We darshan, we learn out, it means with both parts of your heart, your yetzer tov and your yetzer hara. So imru bilvavchem means like speak with your yetzer tov and your yetzer hara. Meaning, explains the Maharsha, that you need to get the yetzer hara to concede to the yetzer tov, and that's done. Again, he references this other Gemara by bringing him to the beis medrash, so to speak, by learning Torah. That's how you can get your yetzer hara to come over to the side of your yetzer tov, referenced by the word bilvavchem. Im natzcha, if you defeat him, mutav, if that's enough to win, then good. V'im lav, and if not, yikra kriya shema, then read shema. Shenemar al mishkavchem. The next words are on your bedside, and that's when we say shema b'shach b'cha. Im natzcha mutav, and if shema, the idea of accepting the yoke of heaven, the oneness of Hashem, if those ideas are enough to overcome yetzer hara, good. V'im lav, and if not yiskur lo yom hamisa, remind you yetzer hara of the day of death. Shenemar v'domu sela, as it says, v'domu sela, you'll be silent forever, and by either you can learn that by remembering the day of death, so that inspires a person to act correctly. That's, I think, the most simple understanding. The Maharsha says it means remind yourself that the Yetzer Hara is just trying to kill you. He's just trying to bring you down. So remind yourself of the Yom HaMisa, of the day of death that the Yetzer Hara brings upon you. And if you remind yourself of that, then you can overcome it. Okay, so that was again expounding the verse of Rigzu v'atechato. Once we brought in about Shema, so then the Gemara gives another interpretation of that pasuk. Continues the Gemara, V'amar Reb Levi bar Chama. Since we just quoted Reb Levi bar Chama, Amar Shimon Lakish, we quote him again. Amar Shimon Lakish, Mai dichsiv. What is the meaning of the verse? V'atna lecha suchos ha'even. Hashem says to Moshe, I will give you v'atna lecha. I will give you the luchos. I think this is in Kisisa. I will give you the luchos, the tablets, v'hatorah v'hamitzvah, and the Torah and the mitzvah, asher kasavti, that I wrote lahorosam, to teach them. What are each of these referencing? What is Hashem giving? Luchos, Torah, mitzvah, asher kasavti, lahorosam. What is each of these a reference to? Explains the Gemara, luchos, elu asar shadibros. When he says, I give you the luchos, the tablets, that means the 10 Commandments. Torah, zemikra, Torah means the rest of Torah shebachsav, of the written Torah. Ve'ha mitzvah, zu mishnah. When he says in the mitzvah, he means mishnah, the oral law. Asher kasavti, that I wrote, elu neviim uksuvim. That's a reference to Nevi'im and Kesuvim, the works of the prophets and the writings. Lahorosam, to teach them. Gemara, that's a reference to the Gemara, the elucidations of the Mishnah, the expansion and explanations of the Mishnah. And all this Hashem says to Moshe, I give you. Melamed, this teaches us, Shekulam nitnu leMoshe misinai, that all of these were given to Moshe at Har Sinai. So not only were the Ten Commandments given to Moshe at Sinai, but also the oral Torah and also the written Torah. Now that needs further explanation. It may mean the written Torah up till that point, because the rest of the written Torah wasn't written down till after, as the Gemara discusses in Gittin. Or it could mean that Hashem gave him the knowledge of at least the halachos of the written Torah that would be written, as well as the lessons of the Nevi'im and the elucidations of the Gemara upon the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kol hakoreh Kriya Shema al mitaso, anybody who reads Shema at bedtime, by their bed, again going back to Kriya Shema al mita, Kriya Shema at night, it's like you're holding a two-edged sword, a double-edged sword in your hands. What are you using the sword for? To ward off mazikin, to fight off the demons. Rashi actually used the word harogas mazikin, to kill the mazikin, to kill the demons. Shenemar, where do we derive this from? Because the pasuk says in Tehillim Kuf Mem Tes 149, Romamos kel biguronam, the greatness of God is in their throats, is in their mouths. Yiranano al mishkavosam, they rejoice on their beds. Uksiv basrei, and then, sorry, I think I skipped a line. Shenamai Romos kel biguronam v'cher pipios biyadam. It says that the greatness of God is in their mouths, and a sword of two sides, two mouths literally, but two double-edged sword is in their hands. Now, what does that have to do with Shema? It just says the greatness of God is in their throats, and the sword, the two edges in their hands. What does it do with Kriya Shema al Amita? My mashma, how is it implied that when you say Shema on your bed, you have a double-edged sword against mazikin? Amar Marzutra, Vitem Ravashi. Marzutra, and some say Ravashi says, Meresha Dinyana. It's based on the preceding topic. Because the pasuk right before that, Yalzu Chasidim B'chavod, the pious will rejoice in honor. Yerananu al mishkavosam, they'll rejoice upon their beds. Uksiv basrei, and then right after that it says, Romos kel bigronam, the greatness of God is in their throats. V'chayer pipios biyadam, and a double-edged sword is in their hands. So we see that this is taking place al mishkavosam. This double-edged sword is when they are al mishkavosam. It's on their beds. It's when they say the Romos of Kel, the greatness of Hashem, on their beds, which is the Shema at bedtime. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak also said, Kol hakor kriya Shema al mitaso, anybody who reads Shema on their bed at bedtime, mazikin bedilin heimenu, the mazikin, the demons, stay away from him. Shin Emar, as the pasuk says, in Eov, it says, Uvnei Reshef Yagbiu Uf. The Reshef is basically demon, some kind of spiritual being. Yagbiu Uf. They'll raise their wings and leave. Now, the Gemara elaborates as Ve'ein Uf ela Torah. So on a drush level, Uf refers to Torah. That Torah, Uf, is Yarbiu. Uf, meaning Torah, lifts them up, lifts them away. Why is Uf Torah? Tishenemar, because there's a pasuk in Mishlei, it says, Hatoif einecha bo ve'einanu. You cast your eyes upon it, and then it's gone. Talking about how it could be, I think it's talking about how it could be difficult to remember Torah. It could be hidden from you, but it refers to Torah as Hatoif einecha bo. That's what you cast your eyes upon. So Taif and Uf are of the same root. So we have a reference here to Torah. Vein reshef ela mazikin, and reshef means mazikin. Reshef means demon. Shnemar, as the pasuk says, Mizera of uchume reshef v'keta meriri. This is part of the tochacha in Parshas Kisavo. No, sorry, this is part of Hazino. It's part of the punishments discussed in Hazino, in the Song of Hazino. It says, Mizei Ra'av Uchume Reshef V'ketev Meriri, bloating of famine, battles of demons, and the cutting down of Meriri of a certain demon, a noontime demon. So Reshef is demons. And what causes demons to go away? Torah. So when one says Shema on their beds at bedtime, so that's what pushes away demons. So it seems it's not specifically Shema, although that is a good option for many reasons. But just based on this passage, at least at face value, it seems it's not specifically Shema. It's Torah at bedtime pushes away the demons. Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Rabbi Shimon Lakish says, Kala osik b'Torah yisurin b'deling himenu. A person who learns Torah, yisurin, suffering, b'deling himenu, it separates itself from him. It saves one from suffering. Shenema, from the same pasuk as the pasuk says, Uvnei reshef yagbiu uf. That uf will get rid of reshef. Being uf el Torah, and uf is Torah, as we said. Shneimar hatayif enechabo ve'inenu. One who you cast your eyes upon and it's no longer there. It's referring to Torah. Ve'in reshef ela yisurin, and reshef is a reference to yisurin. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, mizei ra'av uchume reshef. It says that it says the same pasuk, mizei rav uchume reshef, and mizei rav again is the bloating of famine. Uchume reshef, the battles of, we said, spiritual beings, of demons. There in this version, it's understanding that reshef is a reference to some form of suffering, and again, the pasuk says, "Uvnei reshef yagbiu uf," that uf raises one away from reshef, and if reshef is suffering and uf is Torah, so Torah protects one from suffering. Amarle Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, "Ha afilu tinoko shel beis rabban yodin oso." That's something that even children know, that Torah will protect you from suffering. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Vayomer, and Hashem said, Im shama tishma l'kol Hashem elokecha, or Moshe says, Im shama tishma l'kol Hashem elokecha, if you will listen to the voice of Hashem your God, vayashar beinav taseh, and you'll do what is straight in his eyes, v'azatah l'mitzvosav, and you listen to his mitzvos, v'shamartah kol chukav, and you listen to, and you guard all of his statutes, kol ha'machala asher samtim mitzrayim lo asim alecha. All of the disease that I placed upon Egypt, I will not place upon you. Ki ani Hashem rofecha, because I am Hashem, your doctor, your curer, the one who cures you. So it says in that pasuk, if you keep the mitzvos, then you won't have machala, you won't have disease, you won't have suffering. So Rabbi Yochanan says that's an explicit verse. You don't need fancy drashas about reshef and uf to tell me that if you learn Torah, if you keep Torah, that it protects you from disease. Ella, so rather, says Rabbi Yochanan, Kol she'efshar lo lasok b'Torah beino osek, you can flip the script. If a person is able to learn Torah, but they do not, Kadosh Baruch Hu mevi alav yisurin mechu'arin ve'ochrin. Then Hashem brings upon that person suffering. And mechu'arin ve'ochrin is like some pretty strong description of like terrible, wicked, disgusting suffering. Ve'ochrin also, and it like destroys the person. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Ne'olamti dumia, I became mute with stillness. Hechashisi mitov, I was silent of good, I had no good. Uke'evi nechar, my pain was intense. So I was silent from tov, or from tuv. And then my pain was intense. Ve'ein tuv ala Torah, and tuv is Torah. I was silent from Torah. How do we know tov is Torah? Shenemar, as it says, Ki lakach tov nasati lachem Torah siyata azovu. I have given you a good acquisition, my Torah, do not abandon it. So Torah is called Tov, and it says in this pasuk that Hachashisi mitov, I was silent of good, Uchevi nechar, and then my pain was intense. So it says Rabbi Yochanan, I think it's Rabbi Yochanan talking, that we see that we could say the opposite. That which Torah protects you from suffering, that's obvious. But if one has the opportunity to be osek b'Torah, to learn Torah, and they're silent from it, they don't, so then we can derive from this pasuk in Tehillim that ke'evi nechar, my pain is intense, that intense suffering can come upon them. Chas v'shalom. Amar Rabbi Zera v'Teimer Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Rabbi Zera, and some say Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, said, Borei, come and see, Shelo k'midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu midas basar v'dam. The deeds or the traits of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem, are not like that of flesh and blood. Midas basar v'dam. When it comes to flesh and blood, Adam mocher chepetz l'chaveiro. When a person sells something to his friend, mocher atzev, the seller is sad, assuming it's something good that he's selling. He's sad that he has to get rid of it. Okay, but the buyer is very happy. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu eino kain, but Hashem is not that way. Nasan lam Torah liYisrael. He gave us the Torah, something very valuable. V'samach, and he rejoiced. Shenemar, as it says, Ki lakach tov nasati lachem. I've given you a good acquisition. Torah siyata azovu. Don't abandon my Torah. Like, even after he gives it to us, he sells it to us, he gives it to us, he says it's good, it's a great Torah. You see that he's not sad from giving it. He's still referring to it in a very positive sense. Amar Rava v'Teimer Rav Chisda. Rava said, some say Rav Chisda said, back to the topic of Yisurim, of suffering. Im roa adam she Yisurim buying olav. If a person sees suffering come upon them, yefach shveish b'maisav. The person should examine their deeds, should search through their deeds. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, nach b'sa derachenu v'nachkora v'nashuva ad Hashem. One should search out their ways and investigate and return to Hashem. Pishpeish v'lamatza. If they investigate their deeds and they can't find anything that they did wrong, Yitla b'bittul Torah, they should blame it, they should assume it's due to bittul Torah, it's not learning when they could have learned. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Tehillim Tzadi Daled, Ashrei HaGever Asher Tiyasrenu Ka. Fortunate is the man who Hashem is meyaser, Hashem brings suffering upon them. It could be fortunate. Umitarascha tilamdenu, and he'll learn, and he literally he teaches him from his Torah. But the Gemara here is interpreting it to mean that if a person is suffering, they should go and learn Torah, because it's likely it's for a lack of learning that suffering came upon them. V'im tala v'lamatza. And if they try to blame it on bittul Torah, they don't find any bittul Torah. They're not skipping out on learning opportunities. B'yadua she'yisurin shel abahim. So then they can know that these are just pure yisurin shel abba, pure yisurin of love, pure suffering of love from Hashem. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Ki es asher yahav Hashem yochiach, that he whom Hashem loves, he is yochiach. He rebukes, he straightens, and he might bring suffering on a person just to give them more reward in the next world. That's what Rashi says. Difficult concept to wrap our minds around if the person didn't do anything wrong. So it seems, I guess the idea is that everybody did something and nobody's perfect, and there's, even if one doesn't find anything, but this is there may be nothing that's obvious to fix, but there's a reason, and and this will give them a better portion in the world to come. It's what the Gemara calls Yisurin Shel Ava, suffering of love from Hashem. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Schora, Amar Rav Huna. Rava said the name of Schora and the name of Rav Huna. Kol shakadosh baruch hu chafetz bo. Anybody who Hashem desires, midako b'yisurin. He oppresses him with suffering. Shenemar, as it says, Vashem. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya. It says Vashem chafetz, the one who Hashem desires, dako hecheli. Or the one who Hashem desires, dako, to oppress, hecheli, he brings affliction on him. Yacha afilu lo kibla me'ava. One might think that even if the person doesn't accept them out of love, then it's still okay, it's still an expression of Hashem's, it's still an expression of Hashem being pleased with that person. Talmud Lomar, that's why the pasuk continues, and it says, Im tasim asham nafsho. If he places asham nafsho, literally means like guilt on himself. But the Gemara elaborates, ma asham ladas, just like a carbon asham, an asham offering, it has to be brought willingly. Af yisurin ladas, also yisurin suffering has to be accepted willingly. So in order to, I guess, bring out this expression that Hashem desires the person, he brings him yisurin, so a person who suffers, they can accept it with love from Hashem, or they can reject it, and if they do though, so then it seems they don't experience that expression anymore of Hashem desiring them. If they do accept it, then what is the person's reward? Continues that same pasuk, it says, Yira zera yarich yamim. They'll see offspring and they'll have long days. Not only that, but they'll remember their learning. Shenemar, as it says, v'chafetz Hashem. This is the end of the pasuk. It says v'chafetz Hashem biyado yitzlach. The desired part, the desired gift of Hashem will be successful in his hands. Meaning the Torah will remain in his hands. So the pasuk begins, Hashem chafetz dako hecheli. The one who Hashem wants to oppress, or the one who Hashem wants, the one who Hashem desires, he brings suffering on them. Im tasim asham nafsho, and if they were interpreting it, literally means if they place guilt on themselves, but if they accept it willingly, so then yira zera yarich yamim, they'll see offspring, they'll have long days. V'chevitz Hashem biyado yitzlach, and the item, meaning the Torah of Hashem, will be successful in their hands. They'll hold on to their learning. Okay. Pigi bar Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi and Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. There was a dispute between Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi and Rabbi Acha bar Chanina about the following. Chad Amar Elohim Yisurin Shel Ava. One of them said, this type of Yisurin, this type of suffering, you can know is Yisurin Shel Ava, is suffering of love. Kol she'ein b'en bittul Torah. As long as it doesn't have bittul Torah, a type of suffering where it doesn't stop you from learning, you can know that suffering is Yisurin Shel Ava. Shneimar, as it says, Ashri Hagev Asher Tiyasrenu Ka. Fortunate is the one who Hashem is meyaser, who brings suffering to them. Umi Torascha Talam Dengoing. He learns from his Torah, meaning if you can still learn Torah, yet despite the suffering, then you know that's fortunate. That's the type of suffering that's fortunate. That's Yisurin Shel Ava. B'chad Amar, and the other one says, Elohim Yisurin Shel Ava. The following is Yisurin Shel Ava, is the suffering of love. Kol she'ein bahem bittul tefillah. As long as it doesn't have bittul tefillah, it doesn't have that you can't daven. If a suffering is a type that doesn't allow a person to daven, that's the type of suffering that's not Shel Ava. Shneimar, as it says, Baruch Elokim asher lo hisir tefilasi b'chastei me'iti. The pasuk says in Tehillim, it says, blessed is Hashem that did not stop my tefillah and his chesed from me. So if it doesn't stop tefillah, then I guess we view it as a chesed. Amar Rabbi Abba Breder Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Abba Breder Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to them, Hachi Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Elu ve'elu Yisurin shel Abba hein. Both are Yisurin shel Abba, even if it stops one from learning or it stops one from davening. It's still Yisurin shel Abba. It's still suffering of love. Shenemar, as it says, Ki yas asher yahav Hashem yochiach. The one whom Hashem loves, He rebukes. So it's an expression of love. So how do you understand the pasuk? It says, Asher yagever asher tiyasrenuka, right? We said, fortunate is the one who Hashem brings suffering to, he still learns Torah. How do you interpret that then? Says Rabbi Yochanan, Atikri tilamdenu ela tilamdenu, meaning, don't read it as, and he goes and learns Torah, but rather we can learn it from his Torah. We can learn it from his Torah that Ashrei Yagever, that fortune is the one who has suffering. Meaning, we can derive it from the Torah itself that one is fortunate to have suffering. Why? Because we can create a logical argument of a kavachomer from the concept of shein v'ayin, of the tooth and the eye of an eved, of a slave. The halacha is, if a master pokes out his slave's eye or knocks out a tooth, he has to set him free. So, ma shein v'ayin shein echad me'ivarav shel adam. If shein and ayin, if those are just, if the tooth and the eye are just one organ of a person, and yet eved yotze ben lachirs, and yet if one suffers in one of those areas, if a slave would suffer from one of them, he would go free. Yisurin. So, suffering that's more general, that's more pervasive. Shemimarkin kol gufo shel adam. It hits the entire person's body. Al achas kama v'kama, all the more so that, so to speak, it sets one free. Sets one free from what? From their averos. It's a atonement. That's what Yisurin shel Abba is so great. Yisurin shel Abba, suffering, could be great because it atones for a person's sins. And if just an Eved losing his eye or his tooth sets him free, then surely Yisurin suffering that's pervasive in the whole entire body, that will set a person free from their averos. V'hainu Reb Shimon ben Lakish, and this is the same idea expressed by Reish Lakish, the Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, as Reb Shimon ben Lakish said, Nemar bris b'melach, Nemar bris b'Yisurin. We find that the Torah uses the concept of a bris, of a covenant, in the context of salt. That there's a covenant with salt, like it has to be present for every carbon. The Nemar bris b'Yisurin, there's a bris, there's a covenant with regards to Yisurin, with regards to suffering. Where so? So Nemar bris b'melach, it says that there's a covenant with regards to salt, as the pasuk says, v'lo sesh bis melach bris. You should not withhold, you should not cease from having the salt of the covenant in the presence of karbanos. V'nemar bris b'Yisurin also has the concept of covenant when it comes to suffering. D'chsiv, because after Moshe's tochacha, all the curses that Moshe says in Parshas Kisavo, so it concludes, Ewa divrei habris. These are the words of the covenant. So that's a covenant. The suffering is part of a covenant. So if salt is a covenant, and suffering is a covenant, says the Gemara, there's a connection. Ma bris ha'amur b'melach. Just like the covenant with regards to salt. Melach mimatekes es habasar. Melach sweetens the meat. Doesn't literally sweeten it, but it means it improves it. It gets rid of the blood. You salt the meat, it gets rid of the blood. Af bris ha'amur b'Yisurin. Yisurin marking havanos shel adam. So too the bris, the covenant of suffering, also is like salt. It gets rid of that which is inside. It cleanses one of their deficiencies. It cleanses one of their sins. Okay, one final thought about Yisurim, about suffering. Tanya, we're learning a brayso. Shimon Yochai Bar Yochai says, Shalosh matanos tovos nasan kadosh baruch hu Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave 3 great gifts to Klal Yisrael. V'kulan lo nasnang ela al yedei yisurin. And they were all given through suffering. 3 great gifts that we acquired, and each one came about only through suffering. Elohein, these are them, Torah, the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, v'ha'olam haba, and the world to come. Torah, meaning, how do we know the Torah is only acquired through suffering? Shenem, as it says, Ashrei Egev Asher Tiyasrenu Ka. Fortunate is the one who Hashem is Meyasir. Hashem brings suffering to, Umi Torascha Tilamdero, and he'll learn from his Torah. That you achieve greatness in Torah through the struggle, through the suffering. Eretz Yisrael D'chsev. The land of Israel, as it says, Ki kasher yasir ishis beno, shemalkecha miyasrecha. The pasuk says, just as a father might bring suffering to his son in a form of educational way, so too Hashem does the same for us. And then right after that it says, Ki Hashem alkecha meviachal eretz tova, because Hashem is bringing you to a good land. So it's through the Yisurim, it's through the difficulties that we acquire the land of Israel. Olam haba dichsev kiner mitzvah v'Torah or, because the mitzvah is like a candle and Torah is like light. V'derech hayim tochachos musar, and the way to life in the world to come is tochachos musar, is rebukes of musar, and experiences of rebuke and difficulty are what help a person come to Olam Haba. We will pick up here next time.